We have 4 more acts for you this evening, speaking on the topic of enemies. So please give a big warm welcome to James Rosier.
Hello everyone. Tonight I would like to tell you about the date I had with John Elliott. If you don't know who that is, I'll tell you shortly. But to back up a little bit, I've been on an internet dating site, OkCupid. It's a bit. Rose knows it well. It's horrible, really. I have to be honest. But occasionally you see a spark of light on the internet, and you think, I want to meet this girl. She seems lovely. And that's what happened one day. I saw a girl, and I thought, I will contact her. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll go on a date. Who knows? I got in contact with this girl, and we set up a date in the afternoon. I like to sort of just go for a coffee, something simple, something casual when you first meet a person, because you never know. And if it goes well, you can go on to somewhere else. You go to a bar. You never know. When I was on my way to the date, she called me up and she said, "Hey, guess what? I've been at lunch, a long lunch all day, with my friends from work. We're a little bit drunk. Would you like to join us a little bit early?" Which I at first I was like, oh, that's a bit weird, with the friends and she an alcoholic? I don't know. But then again, I thought that maybe it'll work in my favor. So I was like, yes. And she's like, "I like your style. You're rolling with the punches," and that made me feel good about myself. So I turn up at the place, and I can't see her anywhere. But I do see John Elliott. Now, if you don't know who John Elliott is, maybe you know the Muppets. John Elliott is kind of like one of the bad Muppets that scared you as a kid. Like in Fraggle Rock, when the Fraggles used to run from one side of the yard to the other, there would be a big guy who would try and eat them. John Elliott's kind of like that. If that reference doesn't get you, just think of like an old walnut with bifocals. That's the guy. But if you still don't know who he is, well, for 20 years he was the Carlton president of the Carlton Football Club, and he was also the president of the Liberal Party of Australia. Naturally, he's the sort of person who I would be an enemy of just because of his political affiliations. But sometimes with those sort of people, they are theoretically quite awful, and you think they would be an enemy, but when you meet them, they're actually quite charming. So anyway, I'm looking for my girl, and I see John Elliott, and he's sitting there with a couple of other girls, and then suddenly she appears. She's been in the toilet. She sees me, she's like, "Hi," and so we do awkward first meet that you have when you... Do you hug a person that you've got a thing with online? No. Yeah, but I'm instantly attracted to her in real life, which is good, because it doesn't always go that way. I mean, she's quite an unusual-looking girl. She's kind of got a flattish nose and a big amount of hair, unconventional looks, but quite attractive, and they're kind of vibing. And she's like, "Hey, come and meet my friends. I've got a couple of friends from work, but also John Elliott has joined us." And so she goes, "Do you know John?" And I'm like, and he goes, "Oh, who's this?" And she goes, "This is my date." And he goes, "He's not good enough for you." And so she introduces me to John and to her 2 friends, and I sort of sit down in between it. It's kind of weird and awkward, because I'm kind of be like, "So, hey, how's it?" But it's got like a 4-way conversation. It's pretty clear that everyone's kind of a bit drunk, and so I think the only way to handle the situation is to catch up. So there are drinks all around, and they're bringing out. It becomes pretty clear that the 2 other girls, one of them has the best friend, and the other girl is a lesbian. I know this because she says it repeatedly. I'm a lesbian. So I'm trying to have a single conversation with this girl. Like, do I like her? Do I want to get to know her? But John yells out, who did you guys vote for? Because the election had just passed, and my girl goes, the Greens. I'm like, cha-ching. But I don't get to have that conversation, because they launch into a 2-way political tirade that it's like, "Oh, you shouldn't vote for them because blah, 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 blah." In the meantime, I get sort of scuffled away to the 2 other girls, and The best friend is on my side, it seems. She's like my friend. She's a lovely girl, and she's telling me all these great things about her. The other girl just keeps going on about being a lesbian, which is seems quite odd, but she is very drunk in her defense. Eventually, I say, this is great, but I've got to talk to my date. So I finally sort of get her to a side, and we're just having a little chat back and forth, and it seems okay. And then loudly, the lesbian, she starts declaring that her bitch is a squirter, in her words, which is impressive, but I think inappropriate material for the first time I'm meeting a girl. And this conversation rapidly sort of takes over the vibe of the thing, and it's like, well, who else is a squirter here? And yeah. And then the conversation moved on, which I thought, mercifully, but then it moved on to threesomes. And the two girls here, they both had threesomes, which they're both very proud of it. And then they asked John Elliott whether he'd had a threesome. And John Elliott said, of course. Then they asked me whether I had a threesome. I said no. That wasn't going to go. I think that was the right thing to say, because my date hadn't had a threesome either. So finally, there was this moment where it was like, we're bonding here because we're the only people who haven't had threesomes. And it was at that moment that something switched in John Elliott, because I believe up until that point, he'd been trying to get my girl. I mean, this guy is in his 70s. He's looked like he's been in the 70s for the last 30 years. But he's still trying very hard, and he starts transferring his affection from my date to my date's best friend. And we know that he's transferring his affections from my date to my date's best friends, because he tells us, because he goes, well, you're on a date, and you're a lesbian, so I'm transferring my affections to you. Now, you might have seen John Elliott on Adam Schwar's Agony Uncles show in the last year or so, talking about his various techniques. I never realised that I would get to see them in person. They're quite impressive, actually. Because he was getting a bit tired. He's an old guy. He started saying to the girl, "I'm going home, and you're coming with me." And she said, "No, John, we're out having fun." "I'm going home and you're coming with me." And he just keeps saying it. And here's the thing about it. I can tell that she's considering it. The wheels are turning in her head, but she's having quite a lot of fun. She's like, "No, we're going to, like, after we're here, we're going down to another place." He's like, "Oh, I'm not going to another place." And then he goes, "Look, I'm in the mood for love. Just because you're near me." He's singing. He's serenading this woman. And I'm sitting there. I'm getting a little bit drunk at that point, because that's the only way to cope. But is this actually happening? Am I sitting here and there's John Elliott, who is ancient. He's trying. It's like a path. And they were like, "Oh, look. Let's all go to this other place down the road." And I'm thinking, you know what will be great? If we go to another place, hopefully there will be some Carlton Football Club guys there, like who take John away from the situation. Like, I'm in favour of that. The lesbian girl, she said, I'm going home to my bitch. Her words, not mine. So we go down the road to the other venue, and I realise that it's kind of a mistake, because it's very much a corporate place. Everyone's wearing, it's like 90% men. They're all wearing shirts and ties. I'm dressed much like this, so I'm dressed down for it. And it's also my round, clearly, and they're like, "Oh, get us a jug and get some wine for John Elliott, who's one of the richest men in Melbourne," and I had to buy him wine to keep everyone happy. But I said, "No, look, I'm going to take control of this situation." I mean, we'd been brought to this other place where there was all these, like, big, successful dudes, There was, like, Mr. Charming overweight guy and Mr. IT startup guy and all these guys. And I'm like, "No, I'm going to take this girl. I'm going to find out if I want to spend any time with her." And to take her to a little table, and we get our little drinks, and we was like talking back and forth, finding out about her families. And, it's going quite well, actually. we are actually vibing. I think I quite like this girl, and I think she likes me. And it might have been the alcohol, it might have been the mood, might have been the heightened sense of the situation. But I said, look, I'm going to lean in and I'm going to kiss her. And she was like, ooh, that was a bit much. And then she kissed me back, which made me feel really good. And she said, look, I have to go to the bathroom. And at that moment, I saw John Elliott with his suitcase walking out of the place. He'd been inundated with various Carlton Football Club guys when he walked in the door, and he was never going to get back to his girl. So he went out depressed, and I was like, yes. So my date's in the toilet. I go and chat first to the best friend, and then to this charming overweight guy. He's a friend. They know him. They know him from the pub. Then I see my date. She's come back. She's talking to these two guys. But by the time I got over there, she'd moved on. So I look over the way, and then I see my date, and then we make eyes, and she's talking to the charming overweight guy. I think, I'll go over and say hello again. It was going on quite so well. And when I reach her, she goes, look, yeah, I like you, but... And I was like, you like this guy, don't you? And she said, yeah. So I said, oh, well, best of luck. I kissed her on the cheek and then I left. So that was the end of that. I didn't get lucky that night, but either did John Elliott. So I think that's a triumph for human civilization. An interesting postscript for that. I'm not a bitter person. I try not to be. I try to live life in the moment. But I did see that a few days later, and for the coming period afterwards, she was still on the OkCupid, so it didn't work out with the other guy. Yay. Thank you.
Subscribe for more.